Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm going to be covering the patch 13.7 Changelist, so if you enjoy the content, like and subscribe, and let's get into it. To begin with, there are a lot of changes here. A lot of them are actually pretty impactful, and a lot of them are similar to what I recommended they should do, which I will cover in a bit. So to begin with, Azir is getting a lot of changes. He is relatively weak at the moment. People aren't playing him correctly. They are still Q-maxing over W-max, but they're going to try and change that with the skill recommender. And there's a couple of changes here. So armor's going from 19 to 22. Attack speed's going up by 1%. Attack speed growth is going up by 1%. Passive duration is going from 30 to 45. Passive summon range is going up by 200 units. Q mana cost is going from 65 to 85 to 70 to 110. The stab range is also going down. The mana cost is also going down gradually on the W. And the W damage per rank is also going up. And the W total damage is also going up. So overall, massive buffs towards W. Once again, some more buffs towards Q. They are trying to kill Q max. They are massively trying to buff W max. There is a chance that W max Azir might actually end up close to a 50% win rate. We'll have to see. So keep your eyes peeled on that. Make sure you're W maxing. Katarina, the passive dagger AP ratio is going from 65 to 95 to 70 to 100. This is really big. Our Death Lotus bonus AD ratio is going from 80% bonus AD plus 30% bonus AD per 100% attack speed to 60% bonus AD to 50% bonus AD per 100% attack speed, which is, it's going to relatively even out once you have a lot of attack speed. Things like Bork, Nash's obviously going to get stronger with this if you're going AD on top of those items. Kalista is having her attack damage growth put up by 0.25. If this was by 0.5, which we originally thought it was going to be, a Kalista top and Kalista solo lane could have become a thing. That's what we are kind of scared about, but fortunately we didn't. So it's only 0.25. This isn't enough to allow for lane Kalista. There is still opportunity for it, but yeah, not enough. Oathsworn Bond ceremony shortened by 4 seconds. I'm pretty sure this is the kill, but I'm not too sure about this one. This is the main one here, definitely. Graves, they actually went with the crit bonus, which I kind of hoped they would. Graves' crit builds are still relatively popular, but they are quite a bit weaker than his main builds. So they had win rate to gain, thus 10% more damage on crit bonus. Pretty good. Our cooldown is going from 120/60 to 100/60. This is just an early game buff. This does a bit, but it's not going to impact him a huge amount. So this is kind of placebo. Alistar is gaining 3 armor. His base health is going from 670 to 685. Pretty nice buffs for an engaged support. Yasuo is gaining some huge buffs. His passive shield is going from 100 to 475 to 100 to 575. This is heavily backloaded, so later levels going to increase his scaling. Sweeping blade attack damage damage amp is going from 25% base damage per stack to up to 2 stacks to plus 15% to 25% total damage per stack, scaling with champion level up to 4 stacks. So it's a bit weaker early on, but then it's stronger if you're getting the stack, like if you're stacking up to 4, and then later on it's 100% total damage increase when you have all 4 stacks. So pretty big Yasuo buffs. Rammus is having the W% bonus armor changed from 40 to 100 to 40 to 80%. This is a really big nerf towards solo lane Rammus, and it is still a big nerf towards jungle Rammus, who is starting to max W second. Veigar is having his AP ratios changed into scaling ratios per point rank up. So it's 60% on the Q AP ratio becomes 45 to 65. W AP ratio goes from 100 to 70 to 110. And the R AP ratio goes from 75 to 65 to 75. This is a really big nerf towards Veigar. If this isn't more on when the patch goes live, there's a chance that this just kills the champ. Olaf is passive attack speed is going from 60% to 100 to 50% to 100, and the Q damage is going down by 5. They don't seem to want to nerf Olaf too hard. They seem to be alright with him kind of ruling the top lane, which it's not fun because a lot more people are starting to play Olaf, and he's a very oppressive champion. Sejuani, passive elite monster damage cap is going from 300 to 250. The Q cooldown is going from 18 to 12 to 19 to 13. And the R cooldown is going up by 10 seconds at all rank as well. These are some pretty big Sejuani nerfs. They just overall hurt her, the amount of CC she can output during a game. Plus, she's going to lose a bit of damage on objective clearing. So, relatively big Sejuani buffs. This shouldn't do too much for solo queue. It definitely does more for pro. But, yeah. Vi is losing 20 damage on her Q at all ranks, but then gaining 20% on the bonus AD ratio. The E damage is going from 10 to 90 to 0 to 60, and is gaining 10% on the AD and 10% on the AP. Overall, these will probably even her out to be stronger on the lethality builds, but considerably weaker on the tankier builds. Wukong is losing 2 base AD. W cooldown is going from 22 to 12 to 22 to 14, and the E bonus attack speed is losing 5% at all ranks. Relatively, I mean, these are overall going to be pretty big towards Wukong. They nerf his scaling, they nerf his early as well. W max was becoming the best second option, and most people had already transitioned over. So yeah, these are relatively big Wukong nerfs. Lee Sin is losing 2 base AD and 2 base armor. I did say Lee Sin would become a bit too strong with the last set of changes, at least within solo queue. Within pro, he seems, no matter what, if Lee Sin gets buffed, he's going to see a lot of play. This won't kill the champ. It just means he won't be pick or ban when it starts going towards MSI. Zeri is losing 5 HP growth. The passive shield steal is going from 60 to 50%, and the R-AD ratio is going from 100 to 85. Zeri got nerfed with all the runes and stuff she used last patch. It obviously wasn't enough, so bit of nerfing her. These are some relatively big nerfs, definitely hurts her scaling. Annie is having her E cooldown change from 12 to 8 to 12 to 10, and the E base shield is going from 60 to 20 to 60 to 200. Pretty big towards support Annie, just nerfing her. She's still going to be relatively strong there, and this does hurt mid Annie a bit as well. Fresh, the Q cooldown refund on hit is going from 3 seconds to 2 seconds to stop CC chains. Kha'Zix is having his ISO range change from 425 to 375. This is a buff. This means you can hit targets which are closer towards a unit than they used to be. W Evo slow is going from 60 to 40%. The Evo isolated slow is going from 90 to 75, and the R duration is going from 10 seconds to 12 seconds. This is just nothing. The frustrating part about Kha'Zix, and trying to buff him in relatively they don't want to just give him more damage for nerfing the slow, so they're giving him more util. This is kind of a damage. Quality of life, that's probably the better thing for it. Abyssal Mask is gaining 50 health. Death Stance is losing 10 AD, gaining 15 ability haste, and losing 5 armor. This is a build path over. Death Stance doesn't feel good to build when it has 2 pickaxes, and sometimes people still build like it's the old Death Stance, so I'm not surprised they're reverting it. The current one just feels kind of bad to build as well. Grievous Wounds is now being changed, so it now applies on targets which have been shielded. And Catalyst of Aeons is being buffed. It's being nerfed because this is going to increase the same value of chapter. You can't get it as easily during laning phase, but 75 health to gain is not bad. So it's relatively, it's making it harder to pick up early, so rower champs aren't as immovable early on. So yeah, 1000 to 1300, 225 to 300. So those are the 13.7 changes. Relatively big patch. There's a couple of champions who are missing, which should really receive some nerfs. A couple of champions who could receive buffs on this patch, things like Volibear. Obviously Jarvan should have been nerfed. Obviously hasn't been hit here. A couple of the changes which I covered were things like Sejuani, who did get nerfed. I suggest towards Q damage, they went Q cooldown. Vi ult cooldown, they went with the Q damage and the E damage. I would just still like this cooldown change. Wukong, the jungle mod, instead they just opted into straight up Wukong nerfs, which is kind of sad because this is really going to hurt top lane Wukong. Jarvan didn't get nerfed. We'll probably see him next patch, I imagine. Lee received actually a big enough, they're relatively similar size nerf. I don't want to hurt Lee too much, but they obviously are worried that he's going to become a really big problem. Graves, I did suggest passive crit, which they have opted into, which is really nice to see. Diana, not on this list. I would still like to see Diana jungle be played a bit more. especially if Yasuo is going to be appearing in the meta. It's always nice to see these two. They're quite exciting. No Shyvana. Shyvana's still relatively weak at the moment. And no Volibear. He's also kind of relatively weak. Surprisingly, no Gragas nerfs. I don't know about that one. I feel like this champ's really oppressive at the moment. He does a lot of damage. He's pretty immovable. These aren't big nerfs. It's just a case of, like, the champ's just so oppressive. And they nerfed the shield, which is good. I'm glad they did. They actually nerfed it to what I recommend. Oh, no, they kept the base value, but nerfed it to what I recommended. And but instead of going for the passive, they just nerfed the cooldown. Jace isn't on here. He's still relatively strong at the moment. And Rakan, also really strong at the moment. So make sure you're playing these two champs if you're good at them. Yeah, those are my thoughts. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.